Welcome to Hashtag In Conversation, a show where we have robust discussion with Indian origin career professionals and luminaries and pathbreakers. Through these conversations, we aim to make these as educational resources for Indian origin students across North America and frankly anywhere in the world to kind of learn, engage, and just be part of the conversation. So today we are joined by Arora Akanksha. She is an Indo-Canadian auditor and United Nations official. She has been an audit coordinator for the United Nations Development Programme since 2017. In February 2021, she announced her candidacy to challenge incumbent UN Secretary-General António Guterres in the 2021 United Nations Leadership Selection. She is the first millennial candidate for the position and the first known candidate to challenge an incumbent. So, if selected, Arora Akanksha would be the youngest ever and first female Secretary General. This sounds amazing. So, right off the bat, Akanksha, would you like to quickly talk about your candidacy to our audience and what has been your biggest motivation for it? And just quickly, what are your priorities when we talk about the challenges of the 21st century and the role UN should play in helping the world?
Thank you so much for having me, and hi everyone. Thanks for being here watching this. I am running to be the Secretary General of the UN because I believe in the UN. I know UN is capable of doing great things in the world, but today it's not achieving those objectives that it was set out to do as in ways that it's possible for it to do. For example, it's not serving people. Today we have the highest number of refugees and displaced people, 85 million. Half of them are children. Half of them have been in refugee camps for more than a decade. When it comes to climate action, UN gets approximately $3 billion and only 15 cents, 15, that's 15% actually is used for nature-based solutions. Everything else goes in bureaucracy and holding conferences, writing reports. When it comes to development, in 1980, China's GDP was below all but 3 African countries. And over the last 40 years, Africa has received the most funding. And look where Africa is today and where China is without receiving any funding. So UN has not proven to deliver on any of its objectives in ways that it's capable of. So I believe we need a new UN and we need it now. And my platform is to make sure that we address the refugee crisis because refugees, displaced people, they are not voters in any country. They're not anyone who anyone is fighting for. So UN is the only one who can take care of them, and we absolutely have to prioritize it. When it comes to development, we've tried different models of development, like different Reaganomics model of giving money to the top and hoping it'll trickle down. So I'm proposing 21st century way to develop, which is to give universal internet access to everyone and universal online learning platform from K to 12. This will allow people to achieve their potential and develop their families, their community, countries, and the world at large. Climate. It's an existential threat. We all know that. I want to move from talking to doing. And for me, the two things that are very important are youth unemployment and climate entrepreneurs. So youth unemployment is something that affects every country. We can consider that as a challenge or a biggest opportunity that we have at our disposal, which is to harness the talent of these people in solving climate crisis. So I want to employ them in nature-based solutions. When it comes to climate entrepreneurs, this is a new field that's expanding because we have to redo everything. Like, for example, as much as I try to be conscious about where I get my dry cleaning, sometimes in a rush, I have to give it to whoever is closest to my house. Yeah. And my dresses come back in like hangers that are plastic, covered in plastic. We need to invest back in entrepreneurs to develop different things so we can like change our lifestyle. So I think that's my platform. And I really believe a new generation is the one that's needed at this point to bring a new UN after world post-COVID, because it's going to be a totally different world.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And all your vision and the solutions that you're proposing are something that's much needed. And the establishment or the past UN leadership have I think, failed to counter these challenges that we are kind of facing in this modern world. So my follow-up question is, as a young millennial, if you get the seat on this table, how do you think this will change in terms of just representation, and how would you think it will influence young change makers and innovators who will eventually look up to you, and how would you address them if you get this opportunity?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think one of the big things um, that I think my candidacy is calling out on is lack of representation
Mhm.
and diversity within the UN. We've never had a female Secretary General. We've never had a millennial even been considered for these positions. And half of the world is under 30, majority is under 40.
Yeah,
That's like more
yeah.
millennial.
Mm.
Where are we? When it comes to every profession in the world, we have broken all ceilings and have made significant contributions. When it comes to politics, we're given something called visitation rights, but not participation rights.
Mhm.
And I think this, for me, and through my candidacy, is basically us telling the generation above us that we're ready. We're ready and we're prepared to be part of decision-making process in more significant and meaningful ways. So I think my candidacy is, of course, like to make sure that we bring representation so we can have better decision making. I mean, diversity in every area has always helped. But in terms of the role model aspect of the candidacy, I totally understand that it's now allowing young people to ask for more, to aim for more, to expect more from themselves and from the community at large, because now there's no barrier to them. Like, if a candidate, if a 34-year-old can run for the top position of like the top diplomatic position in the world, um, then no, there's like no limit to what they can
There is
achieve.
no glass ceiling that you can't break. And I totally get it. So I think your candidacy is really important. And that's why I'm really kind of excited and thrilled that we are having this conversation. And I really hope that like people listening to this will be really kind of excited to just like get the call for action to support your candidacy. And who knows, in the future they can run for future political offices. So my question is like, as the executive head of North American Association of Indian Students in Canada, and I've researched, you have done your masters from York University in Toronto. So would you do you want to address the importance of education, and maybe because like our audiences are Indian origin student across North America as well as India. And what I feel as an organization, I really want to focus on the need for education, how education is the cornerstone for actually kind of doing away with a lot of social evils and a lot of social problems. uh, do you want to talk about that? How do you want to address that to the Indian origin students here in Canada who will want to support your candidacy?
Absolutely. So I come from a family where four of my grandparents were refugees. They came from Pakistan to India. So they couldn't even complete their education.
Mm.
So none of my grandparents are educated past middle school. That's when they had to leave Pakistan. And so one thing that they imparted in my parents is the value of education. Like, my dad is one of the first physicians in his village, my mom in her town. And I think for them, that's their biggest accomplishment,
Mm.
that although they
Mm.
couldn't be educated, they educated their kids. So education is what has helped uplift my family from not
Mm.
having anything to making something out of it. So the value of education is very important. And I guess Indian students would know, because it's just our
Yeah,
culture, how much our
yeah,
parents emphasize the
yeah,
value of
yeah, yeah,
education.
yeah.
So I did not do my master's from York. I did my undergrad.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. That's my
Yeah,
bad.
no worries. So I went to Canada at 18 for college, and I think I don't know if I'm sure other Indian students didn't have these experiences that I did, but it was just hilarious because I remember my first day in orientation, and everyone was calling each other "Hey," and I'm like, why are they calling each other grass? I'm so glad I never asked anyone that question, and I figured out what they meant by "Hey." But it was like for me as an Indian student, like I definitely had my learning curve in that system because I came I did my high school in DPS Mathura Road, and Indian education system like at that time was CBSE was totally
Mhm.
different like compared to the Canadian system. It's more flexible, and I was like, wow, this is different. So I think I had a lot of learning curve as a student, like you just language too. Like I
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
fluent in English at all. So for me it was language, and I also wanted to work
Hmm.
because I felt so bad. I was taking money from my parents, and when you do the conversion of like Canadian or US dollar to Indian, you're like, oh my God, I better try to be a bit careful. So I think those were my experiences. as in terms of transition. Sorry, what was your question specifically about the importance of education, right? I just want to tell everyone this is my 11th interview for the day. So if I'm a bit
No, again, like this is like for us, this is an informal conversation. So don't even worry about it. What you're just like what you're speaking about is amazing. And I feel that people are gravitating with a lot of points that you're making, and you're doing fine. Don't worry about it. So let
no,
me
no,
ask
no.
you a really like a chill out question. Uh
The
so
importance of education, like for my platform
yeah,
too, right? Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry. So I think education is something that like I graduated summa cum laude from college, and I
amazing.
think that like I did not. I obviously had no network to get a job and stuff
Mm,
other than my
mm,
own credentials. So I definitely think education is one of the greatest equalizers of our time.
yeah,
And so education is critical. And like you said, it helps remove evil, like in terms of it helps you open your mind to different perspectives, the different
yeah,
points of view.
yeah,
So in my platform, education is critical for me because I do think it's a stepping stone for progress. And after COVID, I have to say that we will be having a new form of education. Online education will become a part of every school.
mm,
Like no longer will commutes be necessary, no longer will lifestyle be the same. So I want to explore on this whole idea of having an online platform for learning,
mm. So my
K to
question,
12.
yeah, I think you just brought it with online education. So my follow-up question with this online education is, uh, as someone who's living in the first world, or as like just talking about me coming from a privileged background, that we have access to the internet. But what about a lot of young people who might not have access to internet? So if you actually reach this top position, how would you kind of navigate a landscape where people get access to the internet and get access to, as you just mentioned, online education will be the new normal, right? New norm. How would you ensure, or how would you kind of just navigate the landscape where you can talk about that education is a necessity for every young person in the world, and internet is one of those things that is a necessity right now?
I think internet is as important as a human right now.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah, totally.
extremely critical, and I think that's something that all countries need to
Mm,
prioritize. India is a great example where digitization helped lift country out of poverty, and I think that is a model that a lot of other low income countries have applied to get to middle income. And one thing that I have to say, like a few stats, today only half of the world has access to internet, and we've landed on Moon and Mars. Imagine if all of us had access to internet, like we could have solved a lot of problems and perhaps be living on Pluto. And it's not an impossible dream at all, because if a bottle of Coke can find its way to every nook and cranny of the world, we can
exactly.
absolutely have
Yeah,
internet.
yeah, yeah.
So it's totally possible, and I think that's something I want to prioritize under development portfolio for me, because development today doesn't mean holding conferences, writing reports, talking about the same thing again and again. It's about doing things, and I think that's what I want to do differently. For example, the current Secretary General, like he created a committee called Digital Cooperation, and they have met 3 times over the last 2 years, produced 3 reports, but we haven't gotten internet anywhere.
Yeah, yeah,
So, so I think internet is critical, and that needs investment. And you need to start with the infrastructure investment of bringing electricity to even talk about that. And in the long run, and when I say long run, I literally just mean 5 to 10 years, the benefit of investing in that internet would be so much more than the cost it took. So I think this is an investment that we as a world have to make.
yeah. No, I totally agree with you. Uh, so now I want to ask you, what are you doing to mobilize support of young people around you? So when I say young people, I'm assuming young people like as young as high schoolers to university going people across South Asia, Africa, North America. These are the demographic that you are kind of talking to, because these are the people who can gravitate and can actually look up to you and can feel a camaraderie that, hey, this is a person that's approachable, right? So what are the fun so again there, you actually mentioned about your vision and some serious things, but what are the fun ways that your campaign is trying to reach out to this younger demographic, right?
So I think maybe this is not such a fun way, but this is a very interesting way. Is as part of my
Yeah.
candidacy, I have to submit something called my vision statement, and I'm calling my vision statement a new UN, where for the first time I'm allowing everyone to be part of the process, where there are topic areas that I'm looking for input, and I'm crowdsourcing ideas. So I think a lot of people who have these ideas, who they think, oh my God, I just wish I could tell this idea to that person and I could get ABC. So I'm hoping like that is a great way. In terms of fun, I honestly wish I was on TikTok. So maybe this is a blind spot for me. So anyone listening, if there is anyone out there who think there's a fun way to do it, please reach out to my campaign and we'll figure it out.
So your campaign is open to actually kind of collaborating on TikTok. So
Yes, that's a
someone want to
yes,
collaborate with Akanksha's team on TikTok, she's open to it.
absolutely. Because I think my days are all in interviews. Like I said, this is my 11th interview for the day, and it's I should definitely do more fun things.
Yeah, and you know what? Like the point is, so my thing is like, why meme culture is popular amongst millennial. Meme culture is a way how we kind of communicate, how we propagate information. It's kind of subverting the mainstream form of communication, and that's what your candidacy is all about. Kind of subverting that. Hey, people in these positions of power have been, first of all, male, and first and second, older men, right? So you are subverting it. You are a millennial, you are Indo-Canadian, so you are subverting all those expectations, and I hope like your candidacy will make UN more accessible, where people can actually collaborate with UN campaigns on TikTok as well. Who knows, right? Who knows?
I know. And
I'm just
also,
assuming.
I feel like UN is like a castle on the hill that we
Yeah,
really need
yeah,
to bring it down to people.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, but UN is revered. Like when I think about the United Nations, I always I always have this feeling of awe and respect, because that's an organization, as like it is something that you look up to, and I'm so happy that you are actually kind of in the running for such a high position. That's great. So I think one of my question has to be very Indian Canadian specific, because this is the organization I represent. Uh, so during the last year of pandemic, we kind of realized that a lot of international students anywhere in the world are one of the most vulnerable groups, from housing to food to education to job to financial insecurity, and now we are also seeing a spike in mental health issues. Uh, a lot of universities, governments across kind of fail to adequately address and help. So, so as a millennial leader, what advice or steps or paths you will forge, where you can actually help these student-centric issues in these unprecedented times that we live in?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it has so many components to it. So I'll start with the one that I'm
Hmm.
directly addressing as part of my campaign, mental health. If you research, like all the research that has been done out there for like under 20 to 25, or even teenagers, mental health is something that affects everyone.
Hmm.
And it's just an issue that really affects their not just mental well-being, but
Hmm.
physical well-being, their ability to like enjoy life and to do things. So I think mental health is something we really need to address seriously. And what I mean by that is we need to acknowledge that it exists, and it's not just a one person or two person issue. It is everyone deals with it in different ways, and we need to have that in our education curriculum. We really need to have mental health as a subject, and start talking about it and educating people and giving them the tools. Like I remember being introduced to yoga when I was a teenager, and I honestly think it helped me a lot. It
Hmm.
calmed me down, and I was like, I wish, like, now that people actually use that. I mean, yoga works for me, yoga and meditation, but like
Hmm.
it really helped me with my mental health. Like when I started doing it, I think I started as a teenager, like when I was 16. Um, and but I'm just saying, like, mental health is not something that we deal with at a curriculum level, and we
Yeah.
absolutely need to. Your question on like international students being vulnerable and like that's
No,
that is
let
yeah.
me rephrase it. So not even international students, students in general, right? Students everywhere in the world, like these are the problems that they're facing: financial insecurity, housing insecurity, a job market that's been increasingly inaccessible. So all these problems, the governments of the world and a lot of organizations or a lot of think tanks have been failing one of the most vulnerable groups. So that's what I'm asking. Like, what do you think about that?
I think you're right. Actually, it's international students, of course, have an added layer of financial burden. I
Yeah.
totally understand that because of the tuition. But it's like you said, it's the whole umbrella of students
Yeah.
being vulnerable and youth unemployment. We really have to live with it. That back in the day, like maybe 40 years ago, even a high school diploma was like acceptable as like a really great thing. Today, PhD also doesn't get you
Mhm.
a job that's possible. So it is youth unemployment is an issue, and I think what's interesting is that youth are taking ownership of it themselves, that
Mm.
they're like becoming social media influencers as a teenager because they know this is the only way that they feel that they can learn new skills, develop new skills, and keep themselves up to date. In terms of policy, it's not it's something that we need to really work on. I totally acknowledge that
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
gap when it
Yeah.
comes to policy, and for me what I'm proposing is for all the climate initiatives, we need to employ young people as much as we can because initiatives are labor intensive.
Mm.
Like, deforestation. How do you address deforestation? You plant trees.
Mm.
How do you address cleaning up oceans or seas or lakes? It is labor. And I find like this is something that young people are so active, they're engaged, and it helps the environment. It allows us to create employment opportunities for them. Entrepreneurship, the stress level, mental health. I think and so I'm new to social media. I didn't sign up before the campaign. Like I wasn't on social media before. I only signed up. It's stressful.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you judge each other based, like we all judge each other based on numbers and that blue check mark and
Yeah.
like so many other variables that it's just too much pressure
Mm.
that I find it so important to allow people to be involved in the world through like beyond advocacy, like, through direct action. And I think that's where climate entrepreneurship is like one idea that I really am a huge fan of. Like you can problem solve things and do things differently. And I think this candidacy is a call out to
Mm.
that the generation above us has failed to serve us. This is where they brought us. So now let us take charge of our own future and be part of it.
Yeah.
And
No.
that's why I really hope that young people support this candidacy and do everything they can because it is breaking a huge glass ceiling for them.
Yeah, it is.
That now you no longer have to wait for 60 to even consider going into politics and being taken seriously. You can go into right after college.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's amazing. Yeah, I totally agree with you. So, uh, I would want to ask you that so I'm really curious to just can you tell me about what was a tipping point that really just motivated you to just say, hey, I think I'm gonna run for the General Secretary for the UN. What was the tipping point? So I'm really interested to hear that.
So yeah, I think my tipping point was so when I was hired by the UN, I had no desire to run for this position. Like, I was just thrilled to be invited to this exclusive club to be working. But in a few weeks of being here, I got hit by a cat. So I
Oh,
was
wow.
leaving work. Yeah, it was 6 weeks into the job. I was leaving work at midnight. I used to live 20 blocks from the UN. So I would just walk home. And it was my walk sign. And this cab driver came and he just hit me. And I was in the ER and I was like, wow, if I had died today, what would my obituary read? Like I had broken a knee, bruises, and all that
And
stuff.
sorry, when was that? It was
February 9th, 2017, just 6 weeks being into the UN.
okay, so it's 4 years ago. Okay, yeah.
It was 4 years ago. So yeah, I healed. But like, that moment you realize, wow, if I had died today and I turned 30 at that time, like, what would my obituary read? That I was a selfish person dedicated to the pursuit of happiness for myself. Like all my life, I had kind of like played it safe. Like, I graduated summa cum laude. I ended up like having these professional accomplishments, like one of the youngest professors at U of T, like writing standards for Canada that I didn't really expand my horizon beyond myself. And like I said, I would donate a little, volunteer a little, but others' problems were others. I wouldn't like take a lead role. But here I was like, if I had died, my biggest regret would be that I haven't given anything. I've just been a taker. So I think I really wanted to shift perspective and start giving a lot. And I promise, like, I'm a person of faith. So I was telling God, if you help me get out of this, I promise I'll dedicate my life to making a difference. So God kept his promise and I'm keeping mine. So this accident happened 4 years ago and I tried to like reform the system within. And I was unsuccessful. Like for 2 years, I tried to be like, I was part of the financial reforms team. So I was like, okay, let me try. And I wasn't successful. So in January 2019 is when I decided I'm going to run for this position myself. I'm just going to run to be the Secretary General. And I announced my candidacy Feb 9, 2021, which is fourth year anniversary of my accident.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. And I hope when you write your biography, you start like with this story, because this is really inspiring. And it's one of those stories where it just like it has like God-induced introspection. So that's something special. That's amazing. I'm so excited about your candidacy. So I know this is your 11th interview. I hope this interview was breezy, wasn't too
Yeah.
inquiring. So now, Akanksha, like the floor is yours. You're talking to the Indian students, international and even Indian origin students living across Canada and the US. What do you want to talk? What do you want to say to them? How can they be involved with your campaign, and why should they support you?
Yes. So first of all, I realized I didn't get to say much in Hindi. So namaste, everyone. I hope aap sab theek ho. So I'm just so glad that you even took the time to stay up to this point in the video, because usually I only watch videos 5 minutes and move on. So thank you for staying this far. My message is that this candidacy is so important for our generation, because we have to crack this glass ceiling of making sure that we can tell the politicians that we are as capable as them in making a difference, and we want to take ownership of our world. You can get involved on my campaign, Aurora for SG, by voting. So there's an icon if you scroll down that says vote. And what your vote does is sends an email to the ambassador of your country saying that you support change, you support a new UN, and you support me as the Secretary General. And that would really help me in bringing the message to the countries that change is required now. In terms of other help, like I know a lot of people have reached out to me for help. I have to say that be creative in asking help, because if you ask us, like for me, the people who are working on my campaign now actually are interns and volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
And we sent out generic email, do this. Those who reached out and said, can we do something more substantial, are the ones who are doing it. So if anyone is interested in getting involved, just shoot an email and propose like what you're good at, and we'll take it from there. But I'm just so glad that I got a chance to chat with you, and I really hope you're all safe and healthy. And COVID has been so tough, and like, you know, I mean, your education is so expensive, because I know international fees are expensive, and missing out on that experience is unfortunate. But I really hope you see the good in it, that it's given you some time to pause, relax, maybe think about what life should be when you do graduate. So I hope soon COVID ends and I get to see all of you at some in-person event.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we are so glad that you joined us today for this conversation. And I am supporting your campaign for sure. And I am pretty sure our audiences will do too. And thank you so much, Akanksha, for this interview. And you've been amazing. And yeah, we are just like hoping that you get this candidacy. So thank you so much for joining us.